you are Carrah's friends, I'm not sure. Maybe family or friends of friends. I don't know. But it's great to see new faces. We are really thrilled to have you here today. I am Nikki Schroeder. For those of you who don't know, most of you do, but the new faces don't. And so welcome to the Center for Universal Oneness. We're happy to have you. And we're thrilled to have Carrah today. She is one of our top favorites here as one of our speakers for the church. And Neal, one of our top favorites as well. A couple of announcements, which you know we always start with. One of them is actually a question to y'all. To y'all? Y'all? And I'm a fixin' to ask you a question. So, did you enjoy last Sunday's talk? You remember back that far, yeah? Yeah. And did you think of it as work or too much effort or anything like that as you sat and listened?
Nope.
No. Okay. Well, you want to know a little secret? That was actually SQ21. Say it's not so. Really, isn't that cool? Because we sometimes can think of like a new initiative as, shoot me now, I don't want to work. And last Sunday was SQ21. So, you already got introduced to it. That's really how easy it is. It's just about being in the moment and being open-hearted, open-minded, and willing to listen and think about yourself and your own spiritual journey. And so, there is another opportunity coming up that's even quirkier and funner. Funner's a word, isn't it?
No.
It is now. So, on April 23rd, at Barb and Bill Herzog's house, in their beautiful, beautiful home, they are going to host movie night, and the movie is Groundhog Day. So you might ask, what in the holy heck does Groundhog Day have to do with SQ21? Well, here's the fun of all of this. There is so much about how we are as people that we can learn from a million different kinds of places. And Groundhog Day is going to be one of them. So there is a sign-up sheet in the back of the room. If you would please let Barb know to sign up for Groundhog Day at her house, April 23. And then there will be a discussion afterward, I assume, to talk about how in the world did that silly show fit with SQ21 and our own spiritual evolution. So how hard is that, and how fun is that?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. and the sign-up sheet is in the back. Easter Sunday is next week, and any announcements about that from anybody? No? Okay. Just Easter Sunday is next week. Let's see, and today is Palm Sunday. So who really knows much about the significance and the symbolism of palms on Palm Sunday? No? Okay, so Doug does. Well, you would be in the minority, apparently. I certainly don't. I grew up Catholic, so we didn't learn the meaning of things. We just learned the Baltimore Catechism. So we did some research as a worship committee, and Jeff has been nominated to share like 1 minute's worth of history about the significance of palms on Palm Sunday. We actually thought I could come and piggyback, but something was wrong about coming and piggyback on the back of an ass.
The ass being me.
Yeah. Okay. So Jeff is going to talk about the palms, and then I will come back and we will kick off the service.
Thank you. All right. Everybody knows what palms look like?
Yes.
Good. All right. Close your eyes and imagine you have a palm in your hand. Or you don't have to close your eyes, but just that you got a palm, and start waving it back and forth. There you go. All right. Now, here comes Jesus, coming into Jerusalem, riding on a donkey, an ass. And actually, it's you can keep waving because Jesus is just passing you by right now. And the whole idea is to make Jesus cool, and also then lay the palm down on the ground just before he passes so that the ride is smoother. Make sense? Now, I want to add to that. You look like you did.
It's also clean.
There you go. Yeah.
Clean
The
the
road.
ass dome.
Never thought of it. I'm gonna go there. Okay. Now, we were at a worship team committee meeting, and we started talking about this very thing. Who would know about the Palm Sunday and what it's all about? And I knew, so I got elected to do this. That's how that happened. But there's one other thing that I think is really amazing about this, and I had no idea, and I'm sure there are plenty of people here who did or do, that the whole process from moving from Bethpage into Jerusalem and all the way through the week into Easter, the crucifixion and the resurrection, was prophesied by Zechariah, a prophet, 200 years before. And Jesus was actually living out, making sure that the prophecy became real. And who knew? I had no idea about that. And so that's something worth checking if you have other questions about it. So that's it. Did I go over my time? No? Okay.
Okay, any other announcements that we're missing? No? Okay. We ring the bell in universal oneness, and we feel the vibration that unites us all in love and in peace. And our pre-lit candle symbolizes the Christ light and presence in all of us. So you already know that I am Nikki. We are very, very honored today to have Carrah and Ben. So Ben, will you kick us off with the song? Oh, and Ida will be our prayer person. So Ida, would you come up and pray? And then after Ida's prayer, Ben, would you open us with song? Thank you so much.
So I trust you all see the lighted candle that symbolizes what? The Christ in us. So let's just take, I want you to take it personally right now. Not just this candle here, but the Christ in us, in each of us, personally. And we are meant to express the Christ presence of love and joy and togetherness and support. You can think of all those wonderful traits of character that you have the opportunity with the Christ light shining in and through you to express. Thank you, Father.
Well, good morning, everyone. I feel like I've just been to a stand-up comedy special. So thanks for starting us off with laughter. When I read Carrah's talk, this is one of the first songs that came to me. A beautiful one by Neal. I hope you like it. Well, I've seen my share of struggles when I thought that I knew best. When I sailed through a storm instead of stopping to rest. And it always seems the hardest when I make up my stubborn mind. But I'm changing my ways this time. Wanna be like water coming down a mountain into shadowy canyons, flowing from pool to stream. Wanna be like water, head uphill no more. I am bound ever seen an eagle flying straight into the wind? Well, he doesn't fight or struggle, he spreads his wings and just gives in. But in the end he always seems to make it home just fine. I think he knows that every storm subsides. Wanna be like water coming down the mountain into shadowy canyons, storms, flowing from pool to stream. Wanna be like water, head uphill no more. I am bound for the sea, and I'll let nature take its course. No more thinking that I know where this river is supposed to go. 'Cause I've railed against the stars for the cards that I've been dealt, the lottery I didn't win, the heartache that I've felt. But it seems when I let go of expectation and regret, life has plenty of surprises for me, yeah. Wanna be like water coming down the mountain into shadowy canyons, flowing from pool to stream. Wanna be like water, head uphill no more. I am bound for the sea. Yes, I am bound for the sea.
I don't need an introduction, I guess. That's how cool I am.
Definitely.
Carrah's very cool. Now she's going to talk to us.
I brought my little mallet. You guys should get one on Amazon. We had a discussion about this last time. Didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
Okay. Yeah, these are way better. I've condensed this down from the original. I gave this talk, added a lot more, and it was about 40 minutes. So we're gonna, Barb, I promise you, I won't be 25. So I have a new religion. People, especially here, often ask me, what do you believe? And I did give a talk about spiritual humanism. I'm a spiritual humanist. That's what I believe. I can give that talk again if you wish. But I do have I want to add to my new religion. This is my new religion. I got flashcards and I'm going to memorize every single one of them. They give and they ask for nothing back. They're in everything, all of us, everywhere, at all times, all in the same place. They also don't discriminate and they don't have opinions. It's kind of remarkable. I'm really into the elements right now. That shows up in a lot of different ways, but I get emotional about it sometimes, that we just take these things for granted. We don't acknowledge who we really are. So that's part of my new religion. What I'm about to say today is part of what I experienced at the Parliament of World Religions. You could take 40 people and you could have 40 different talks about their experiences at Parliament. This is just my experience, and it's just one vein of my experience. I was honored to give 3 talks there, so I'm not even going to go into that experience, which was tremendous. It did leave me more exhausted than I usually would have been. It's 8,300 people were there this time, 120 different countries and 80 different faiths. For a religion junkie, it is overwhelming even. I mean, even my brain was exploding every half hour. It's too big and too vast to put into just one talk, so this is just a little bit. If you get a chance to maybe Google some hashtags, POWR 2018, you'll get all the searches for people who have their input and insights from Parliament. So I encourage you to do that. There's lots of stories out there. I'm going to begin with the way that the Indigenous introduced themselves at Parliament, and I learned this as a way to acknowledge the elements in a way. I am Carrah Bechtel, daughter of Robert and Beverly Bechtel and sister of Amanda Willis. I was born by the Missouri River, but raised by the dry wash of the Ryuto River in Tucson, Arizona. On my mother's side, I come from a long line of Norwegian women who came to Lamoni, Iowa in 1842. My father's side of the family from Ireland and Switzerland came over in the 1600s and settled in Lancaster County, Pennsylvania. So I am Pennsylvania Dutch from the Schuylkill River. I am now back at the Missouri River, and I have been here since 2003 with a brief spell in Dublin by the River Liffey, and then Belfast by the River Lagan, where I became a mother. My daughter is a child of the River Lagan. I come from a long line of opinionated women, and one particularly strong woman, my father's mother, who taught me to be grateful no matter what, even in the worst of the worst. And she absolutely knew the worst of the worst. My father's transgressions and lessons and enlightenment are in me. My mother's unconditional love and ability to let me grow without strict boundaries has allowed me to be myself, which in turn allowed me the freedom to change my name to Quigley, my father's mother's maiden name, because I could no longer grow inside the name Bechtel. And so I am Carrah Quigley. I had signed up at Parliament to receive a certificate of Indigenous cultural awareness. I had to get 8 hours of Indigenous programming under my belt. And on day 1, I was very optimistic I could get this done by at least day 4. No problem, easy peasy. Started with the opening Indigenous fire ceremony, where they light the fire that is tended to for 8 days. All the major leaders of the religion, if they're there on day 1, they show up to the fire. So I'm standing next to like African priests, Hindu swamis, Indigenous chiefs, pagan priestesses from every order imaginable, even the Lithuanian indigenous tribes, and they're all around in a circle and they all make an offering. It's quite moving and wonderful. A tribal leader from the Hawaiian tribe chanted her introduction and reminded us that the word for water in Hawaiian is wealth. And she reminded us that the Hawaiians then must be the richest people in the world. Here's some of the fire ceremony, the people standing around. And it's nice for the Indigenous too, because they often don't meet internationally very often, so this gives them the opportunity. This is a Swami I met at Union Theological Seminary in 2002. I didn't remember his name until I saw his picture in the program for Parliament. I was finally able to thank him. One of the things I remember about the interaction at Union was when he spoke, he said, if you are anti-violence, then take a look at something on your plate. If you are anti-violence, then take a look at what you're wearing. If you are anti-violence, then think about what you're saying to yourself. All these forms of violence that we wear, that we eat, that we tell ourselves, that we are unconscious about, and yet we call ourselves non-violent in our big spiritual exercises. So I've never forgotten that, and I was able to hug him, and he was very charming and wonderful. He's a Hindu activist. This is Jim Dumont, or is this, no, this is Grand Chief Wilton Littlechild, responsible for the reconciliation, the Truth and Reconciliation Committee in Canada to heal the wounds with conflict resolution and mediation of all the children stolen into the Canadian public school system. I had about 4 hours of sleep a night. I ate Cliff Bars sometimes for meals. Sometimes I skipped meals entirely because I had to get to lectures. The book is about this big. There's about 200 hours of programming probably per day of things that you could go to. This is the lodge where most of the Indigenous programming takes place, ones that aren't big, plenaries or big panels. So they teach inside here, they light fires, they have offerings, and then there's a delineation of space, of course, where the elders sit closest to the fire, and those coming as guests sit further away. By day 4 or 5, I realized that I probably wasn't going to get my 8 hours. It was going to be too difficult. And then the only programming left that was on, that I seemed to keep showing up for, was on water. And I don't really care about water. It's not my thing. I am under the sign of Cancer, and I don't know why. Why was I born in July? My most hated month, except for August. I can't imagine. I'm not even a sun person. I don't like the summer. I don't like water. I don't care. Cruises are probably my worst nightmare. You come to me for the cruise, like all-you-can-eat buffet, I'm not going. I'm sorry. It's just not going to happen. A calm lake, I can do. A roaring river, a babbling brook, the ocean waves. I like all that. That's good. I can do that. But if you ask me for a vacation, I'd rather see the mountains of Banff, Canada, or have an adventure in Bangkok. I'm from Arizona, the land of no water, so I'm kind of used to that, hence why I hate the sun as well. So anyway, people always talked about the underground water in Arizona. In my 7th grade science class, we had to calculate how many gallons were in the Tucson underground reservoir. My freshman year in high school, we had to do an essay on water scarcity, and I asked the teacher if I might write my own essay with a subject of my choosing because water bored me to death. So I wrote about rock and roll. My teacher gave me a C, and then she submitted all the essays to the Masons Lodge, and I got #1 first prize in the city. So, I don't know. I got to beat out 2 valedictorians. I was pretty happy about that. So water is not exactly my most captivating subject. So I sat, I took notes, and I wasn't going to let the $125 I spent on the certificate go to waste. So I sat and learned. I thought, I'm here for a reason. I might as well just absorb it. Isaac Day of the Ojibwe from Serpent River First Nation, there's more of the lodge. He's standing next to Grandmother Flotamayor from Guatemala. He talked about water being love. And this was said in the 2015 Parliament, so I diligently took it down again, and I didn't think much more of it. And then this elder sort of piped up toward the fire, and he said, well, you can't have life without love. And I, for the first time, sort of made a connection. Water, life, love. This is something that goes together. And then I went on to this lecture about Saraswati. This woman is a complete badass. She is Dr. Elizabeth M. Rollman of University of Calgary. She is fluent in Sanskrit, and she was chosen to write the chapter on Saraswati in the Oxford Dictionary of Hinduism, which for a white woman, that is a huge achievement to be asked to do that. In her lecture on Saraswati, she said that Saraswati began as a river, and that most goddesses in the Hindu pantheon began as rivers. So I wrote that down too. I went to see Margaret Atwood, who was speaking there. She refused to speak about her work. She only wanted to speak about the climate crisis. 60%, she said, of our global oxygen supply is in the ocean. If it dies, we will die. And when we cut 60% of our oxygen supply, we will die slowly, and we will get stupid first. And I think that that's already happening. Jonathan Granoff, one of my favorite people alive on the planet today, he knows where every single one of our 17,000 nuclear warheads is kept. He's doing everything he can to make sure they are not accidentally deployed. He knows all the stories you don't want to know about how close we've come to all of our accidental destruction. He is a person of peace. He's also deeply philosophical, and he's also quite a theologian. Speaking with him, you get very deep and very emotional very quickly. I ran into him in the lobby. We talked about the Parkland kids. He's trying to work with them on understanding how to change the American culture from violence to nonviolence. He said to me, violence is in everything, and people don't seem to understand that. Violence is in our Constitution. It's in our families. It's in the founding of this nation. It's in capitalism. It is literally in every pore of our country. We are a people of violence, and we are unconscious to it. As I walked away from my conversation with Granoff, I began humming the national anthem. And the rocket's red glare, and bombs bursting in air. A song I was taught to cry to by my culture. A song of violence and war. And the flag is unfolded at every sporting event by people in the military, and so even our sporting events, a symbol of unity, is not untainted by war. Margaret Atwood said something that I also heard Phyllis Curot say. Phyllis Curot is a high priestess. She has her own order that she founded. She is a lawyer for pagans, indigenous, and people who, nature is very important to their practice of religion or way of life. She's actually quite incredible to listen to. Both of them said this: all the problems in the world today are due to gender inequality. I wrote that down, and I thought about that quite a bit. As I followed every single problem we face today globally, it did stretch back to the idea that patriarchal structure has been damaging to all of us. Vandana Shiva reminded us that overpopulation is not because women want to have babies, it's because of injustice toward women. Overpopulation is about belief systems, agricultural waste and pollution by capitalistic predatory companies where women do not work and for the most part have no leverage or voice, continue to cause economic inequality and environmental degradation. Religion, one of the most unequal places for women, and bonus, all of that gets written down. And something is written down is also a patriarchal ideal. Women, over centuries, keep our oral traditions, and as of yet, still have not written down our oral traditions for a millennia. They also, women, lack education because in many cultures, once you have your period, you stop going to school. One of the major tenets of Vandana Shiva is that the idea of monoculture, how we plant our seeds, one seed per field in very large supply, is a way of monoculturing your mind. Using fossil fuels will also fossilize your mind. And so, of course, I wrote all of this down. I still had more Indigenous programming to get through. I went back to the lodge, and this lecture was about water. My head was literally swimming with thoughts and stories about droughts and floods. I took more notes. I learned more about water. I thought about my talk with Dr. Granoff. I heard the voices of the many speakers echoing in my head. Our violent past was anything but. It continues to be our violent present. The genocidal way in which we inserted ourselves onto the global stage continued our legacy of scorched earth and expendable human beings. Using up everything in our path has always been our way. Our American dream is the world's nightmare. I had heard this all before, but it resonated with me as I walked the halls even deeper. Our trash and consumption is now the dictator of the world. I needed a little relief, as you can imagine. I wanted a good old-fashioned interfaith panel, so I went to this panel called Faith in the Earth, and I thought, this is great. Title is innocuous enough. I was prepared for philosophy and theology, something I could just kind of swim with for a little bit and take some notes. It was a packed room. You had Vandana Shiva, Swami Puja Chinnan Saraswati, and his student, and now pretty much the person that runs his organization, Sadhvi Bhagwati Saraswati, she's speaking there. Michael Bernard Beckwith, who most of you know, Rabbi David Rosen, and Mohinder Singh Alwala, he's a Sikh leader. Sadhvi Bhagwati got up as the first speaker. She comes to the microphone and she says, "I'd like to talk about water." I sighed, rolled my eyes probably, and then just kept sitting there saying, I'm here for a reason, I'm here to learn something. So I took notes. And then I was completely blown away by what preceded her introduction. I'd heard these things before, but never quite in the way that they were said. The UN, according to the UN, 3.2 billion tons of carbon dioxide emissions per year are from animal agriculture. According to the UN, by 2040, we will have half the fresh water we need to survive on the planet. 1 pound of beef is the same amount of water if you bathed every day for 6 months. She asked if we were willing to refrain from bathing for 6 months in order to have a burger. She said this is not about shame or guilt, this is about empowerment since we all have the right to make choices. She went on, 10 to 16 pounds of grain for 1 pound of beef. By eating 1 pound of meat, you are saying you deserve the food of 15 people. People say there is a global food shortage, but we grow enough grain in the US to give 2 loaves of bread to every person in the world nearly every day. There is no shortage. We create the shortage. We create poverty. We create hunger. What we eat and how we eat it and how we grow it makes the rest of the world hungry and is causing our planet to die. There is no shortage of food. There is only a global consciousness shortage. Vandana Shiva stood up to speak. If you know anything about her or have seen her speak, this is usually her theme. The chemicals of war became the chemicals of food. The Zyklon B company responsible for the cyanide poisoning of the Jews at Auschwitz in the gas chambers diversified and became a chemical company, innocuous enough. The tools of genocide have now been converted into the tools of ecocide and further still genocide with all of the cancer. Agent Orange, the second product from the fabulous company of Monsanto, the first product being DDT, another fabulous product, was converted into Roundup. Agent Orange became Roundup. The chemicals of war have now become the chemicals of food. Now agriculture and food scarcity are the new war, and these companies continue to make money. In the last few decades, the Living Planet report, 60% of all species are gone. 83% of all freshwater species are gone. 93% of cultivated diversity is gone. Factory farming, grazing animals that were not designed to eat grain are literally eating the food for all of us on the planet. Species extinction is now 1,000 times the natural rate. The UN reports in the Living Planet Biodiversity Panel, animal agriculture and land use are the single biggest source of species extinction. 40% of the climate crisis is due to animal agriculture. And just so you know, it's not called the climate change at Parliament, it is called the climate crisis. We have changed. It's no longer in a phase of changing. It's what it is now, it's the crisis. Vandana continued, nature deprives no one of food. We do not produce food, the earth does. How we eat determines the future of our planet and the future of all humanity. Michael Bernard Beckwith ended with this. When I drive home from work, I drive past McDonald's, Wendy's, and Kentucky Fried Chicken. I call this the new death row. As I looked at Toronto from my backseat, this is Swami Chinand with a bunch of other leaders together, and whenever you make eye contact with him, he always touches his heart, and it always gives me the chills. I love him, he's wonderful. This is Rabbi David Rosen, Chinand, and then this is everybody taking a vow to be vegan. I'm sure maybe 20% succeeded for a while. This is the fire taken from the 3rd floor of the building. As I looked at Toronto from the back seat of my Uber and waved goodbye, I wondered what would be the thing I could think about. What would be the greatest lesson that would crystallize over the 8 days I experienced? What would be the awesome, life-changing talk I could come up with? And all that came to me as I turned around and sat back to look forward was water is life. And of course that made me frustrated and bored. Over the next few weeks I had some panic. I kept tossing and turning and thinking about 2040 when we will have only half the water we need to survive on the planet. We have 12 years to turn this whole thing around. My vodka intake increased. I did not sleep very well. I had a classic break with reality, what some might call a nervous breakdown, in increments. There had to be something better I could talk about. There had to be something that would move us all, something groundbreaking. I waited, I stewed, I pouted, and I still tossed and turned, and I still drank my martinis. Water is life. It's a scientifically provable fact. Life is love. What that elder said was true. You cannot have life without love. When you learn how to love, love is life. Just like Isaac Day had said. Water, life, love. It drove me mad like some Edgar Allan Poe line, following me like a heavy footstep in the night down a dark alley. Water, life, love. Water, life, love. Water, life, love. Then, like any religious studies major having an existential crisis, it dawned on me. Holy crap, that's a bona fide trinity. Maybe that was the original Trinity. Maybe the one before religion. We came from water. We're going to go back to the water. Daniel Nemo just said that, right? We're going to go back to the ocean. He was at Parliament, not a dry eye in the house when he performed, by the way. He was amazing. In 20 years, we will have half the water we need to live. So do we want to live? Do we value life itself? Do we value who we are, which is water? Water comes in 3 forms: liquid, vapor, and solid. Right up there's me and Vedanta Shiva. The ending fire, fire burns out. There we are. As a religion major, then I had to ask, liquid, vapor, solid, was that the original Trinity? Was that the thing the ancients could see? 3 forms, 1 life. I also began to connect that water was always seen as the feminine. The women are at the well. Aquarius, the water bearer. The goddess Saraswati began as a river. The sirens in Greek myths, women. Women are still the water gatherers in a majority of the countries. When your water breaks, your baby is born. The Hawaiian word for water is wealth. Women must be very, very rich. A word I learned at Parliament that I'd never heard before was this little word called gendercide. It refers to the 100 million women never born into the world because of 20-week abortions in countries that value male lives over female lives. As soon as the sonogram at 20 weeks is taken, gender is determined, the women are aborted. I remembered that fact, that all the problems of the world are due to gender inequality, and I realized, well, that really starts in the womb then. 100 million women are never born every single year. What is that doing to the planet's balance? It's like the Earth is trying to create a balance by birthing more women, but we keep throwing it off. If we treat women better, will we treat water better? Very often the way we treat women is the way we treat water. Water is a she, and water is also who we are. And so that she, that femininity, is in every single one of us. Why do we tend to fear that balance? I began to have visions of our biological ancestors making their way out of the water, growing legs, and eventually becoming the upright apes that we are today. We are 2/3 water. The earth is 2/3 water. We are the fingerprints of the ocean left on the land. We are not of the earth. We are of the ocean. We are water, interrupted at times with bone and skin and muscle. We are water, just like the trees surrounded by bark. Everything is water. We must not be earthlings after all. We must be waterlings. And for whatever reason, we are killing, polluting, and privatizing not our source, but our own very lives. Make no mistake, as the climate crisis deepens, the corporations making money off the last few years that we have of fossil fuels will set their eyes on water, and our survival will become commodified, and they will sell stocks based on how we have to survive. And this is already starting to happen. Michael Burry, the man credited with noticing the housing market bubble was about to burst, he predicted the economic decline of 2007. What do you think he's looking at right now? Water. Without water, we die. In 2040, we will have half the water we need. Do I need to say it again?
No.
Develop a relationship with water. Take stock of our violent nature as descendants of white Europeans and our continued violence in American culture. See the genocidal nature of dismissing water. The indigenous would laugh at the way we treated water, our lack of respect for floods and droughts and rivers and streams. Only a genocidal culture would keep the water running while they went to get something out of the other room. Only a genocidal culture would put frozen water inside of water. Only a genocidal culture would put water in a plastic bottle, then drink it, and then throw it out to pollute more water. Only a genocidal culture would order water at a restaurant and then leave it on the table, discounted, ignored, and left to be poured down a drain. Only a genocidal culture would flush water down a toilet. They would bathe and cry about their day. They would take a shower and bitch and moan about their situation when love is flowing all around them. Only a genocidal culture would be blind to that love. Maybe it's because, as Francois Paulette said, white people think water comes from the tap. Develop a relationship with water. Water doesn't come from your home, it is your home. The mother. From now on, when you turn on that faucet, pretend you've got